Hey everyone, it's that guy in Hutch, Jason Probst, and you're listening to That Podcast in Hutch. I brought Jon Richardson in to talk with me as part of our ongoing series on property taxes. I thought it was important to get a city council member, and Jon isn't on the city council now, but he just left in January. I thought that experience and that voice was important in this conversation because Jon has a lot of insight on how policies at different levels of government, such as the state level and to some degree the federal level, affect what the city has to do here, not only in terms of how they can raise money and how much money they can raise for the city's operations, but some of the regulations that are handed down from other higher levels of government that force cities to comply and put in place things that are more expensive, all of which is borne by local taxpayers. In the discussion, I think you'll find, well, one thing you'll find is that we touch on a lot of different topics. Conversation with Jon is never dull and it's never linear. We're going from, we talk about one thing and it sparks another conversation about another thing. And I think that makes for a really interesting conversation. And in this case, it makes for a little longer podcast than we normally do because we just started talking and time got away from us. So if you need to, break it up in chunks, do whatever you need to do to get through it. But I think you're going to really like this conversation that we have with Jon. And I think you'll really appreciate the insight that he brings about his experience serving on the Hutchinson City Council and some of the challenges that he had trying to balance what efficient spending and maintaining as low a tax rate as possible while also trying to provide people in this community with the services that they've come to expect and in a lot of ways demand. So take the time to listen to this. We'll have more episodes coming up dealing with the property tax and looking at some of those issues. But today we have Jon Richardson, former Hutchinson City Council member. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation. I have Jon Richardson in the studio with me today. He served on the Hutchinson City Council. And as part of this bigger conversation about property tax, I wanted to bring Jon in to talk about how some of these things affect the city budget, because I think you'll find, or you are finding, it's a lot more complex than we sometimes think. So Jon, thanks for coming in today.
Oh, I appreciate it. This is fantastic.
Before we were talking a little bit about the budgeting process, and I know I've talked with some other people about this. From a city perspective, how do you guys go about setting a budget?
Each year's a little bit different. If we were to go back in time for my experience, I'm no longer on city council. Yeah. Let's start with that. Well,
let's do that. Yeah. So you came off in January, is that
correct?
Right?
I'm 4 months retired.
All right. How you liking that life?
It's fantastic.
Yeah. You don't miss the emails.
No, I've traded challenges from one thing to another, but yes, no, it's good.
Well, how long did you serve on the city council?
4 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And during some pretty challenging times, because you came on, 20,
21, 22, 23, yeah. Or 22, 23, 24, and 25. So the big topic at the time was the Woody Seat Freeway, what we were going to do with Woody Seat at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you're not, when you weren't on the council, while you were on the council, but now your day job is in construction.
Right. Yes. I operate a construction company with my brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're very familiar with buildings and commercial buildings particularly, I think.
Yes. I live more in the industrial and commercial world. That's kind of how I got involved in city council. I actually started out, I was on planning and zoning for quite a while in the building trades board. Mm-hmm. And then a few people approached me about being on city council, and I turned them down a few times. And then I eventually signed. I was actually on jury duty, and I got off jury duty and walked over and signed up. So.
Well, you liked that experience so much, you thought, give me more, please?
No, it was just, it was a weak moment. It was a weak moment.
Yeah. Well, in your time on the council, talk about kind of like, did your perspective change a little bit about when you went in versus when you came out, about the kind of the role and function of city government? Were there things that surprised you?
It's a little bit interesting. So our local city government, if I were to give a little synopsis of it, that's kind of interesting. we have 5 city council members. We have 4 districts and then 1 at large. And then we have a city manager type government. Mm-hmm. So the city council members, by far and away, are not educated. They don't live their lives for municipal government service. Yeah. Everyone's got day jobs. They're just members of the community that are guiding the decision making of our community through the funnel of the city manager down through the departments. Mm-hmm. So the city council members aren't really brought up and have 10, 20, 30 years of experience of government.
Yeah.
They are more of part of the people of the community, chosen by the people of the community to represent them.
Yeah.
So it's not really a job.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of looking behind the curtain. There's a lot of navigating people and navigating personalities.
Mm-hmm. Both internally and externally.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very much
because
so.
the city employs, I mean, it has a lot of departments doing a lot of different things. And then you have to try to maintain the interaction of those departments and how that all interacts with the public.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say I came in with a lot of, I guess the term is preconceived notions, mm-hmm. There's a lot of things people see in the community they observe and they criticize of city employment, city employees. And some of that I understand. Some of it is warranted, but coming into that role, I'm glad I didn't come into it guns a-blazing and just being critical. There was a lot of, why are we doing things this way? Why is this way? Why is it that way? And I would say 4 out of 5 times there was valid reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
So, and even just driving around town myself, maybe I see 4 or 5 guys at a traffic corner. I'm thinking, why do we have 4 or 5 people out here rather than 2? And I'll ask. And sometimes I'll find out, well, they're cross-training because we're short in the department. We need people to back up.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But at least it's important to ask.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is I didn't know that. We need to make sure and we fix that. But
it is interesting that the first assumption people go to is that you have a government that's wantonly wasting money just by having 4 extra people standing around.
Every process is going to have some inefficiencies.
Yeah.
I'm actually somewhat pleased when I see at least there's an effort to remove inefficiencies. Yeah. And if there's policies and procedures in place to try to do that, I'm fairly pleased because it's a constant improvement.
Well, and some of that is the process of the relationship you have with the city manager and the city council, asking questions and getting information. And I think I saw a lot of examples of when the council did that over the last several years, trying to make sure that we're being as efficient and as effective as possible.
And it's interesting, the city council overseeing the city manager position, as people who aren't involved and have as many skills or experience in navigating running a city, mm-hmm. it's almost having more of a coaching aspect, especially when whoever is signed up as mayor each year, because there's a little bit more one-on-one as the mayor with the city manager.
That's right.
And I think it's when we had, before Enrico, we had a city manager that we had hired, and I was mayor at the time. And when we hired him, I said, this is really awkward for me. I'm used to being kind of the boss in what I do. I've had bosses before, but this isn't really a boss situation where I know more about your job than you do.
Yeah.
So it feels more like I'm in a coaching position and I'm encouraging you and trying to help you, give you the freedoms to make the decisions you need to make based on the guidance city council's giving you.
Yeah. And
are we giving you good communication on what your goals should be? So there's a little bit of feedback with that. And then we ended up moving on to a different city manager. So that process started all over again.
Yeah. And that's been and there's a learning curve for city council members and a learning curve for new city managers when they come in as well.
Yeah. And so we have Enrico as a city manager. I would say the one thing if I were to criticize, I feel like he's very aggressive and takes on a lot of things at once, but I also don't want to discourage someone from being aggressive and taking on a lot of things. So kudos to that attitude.
Yeah.
I want to see more of that.
Like the can-do attitude,
that get
right?
stuff done.
Yeah.
Hey, don't hold him back too much. I want to see that attitude encouraged.
Yeah.
So
and there has been a lot of movement in the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah, and you get friction when you have a lot of movement.
Sure.
And so there is a lot of creating new relationships, and then at the same time, and that's a challenge for someone in Rico's position, moving into town, stepping into a role for a couple of years, trying to make moves, make things happen. Some are going to pay off real good. Some moves are, hey, that we learned a lesson. I'd rather have someone that's active than someone that's just keeping a chair warm.
Yeah. Keeping their head down, trying to keep the peace.
He's not a city office manager. He's a city manager. He needs to be among the city, getting things done with other departments and ancillary groups that work with the city.
Yeah. Yeah. Of which there's a lot. And
there is
a lot of different groups come in and work with the city. Yeah. They're just, when you think about the layers of relationships there with the city, within the city, constituents, county, state, there's a lot of nonprofits that kind of feed into that too. There's just a lot that has to be considered and thought about when decisions are made.
Well, and when do you have your hat on as a city employee versus a community member that cares about the community?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's the same hat.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, a lot of it, we're all community members. To what level of involvement do we have?
Yeah.
And if you're a city employee, where's your role with that? And where's your role as just a community member that cares?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily that doesn't necessarily have to be separated, but those are.
But sometimes the interest is different,
Mm-hmm.
or the purpose is different, because as a city council member, you have a different purpose. I mean, sometimes they align with your role as a community member, and sometimes that requires a different sort of vision.
It does, and it creates some friction with personal relationships, family, friends, whatnot. It does make you appreciate the people that may not agree with the decision you made, but they appreciate you're making the effort.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a special, when you have someone that just completely ignores you and you were close to them for a long time, friend or whatnot, and you don't even know why. You just assume you made a decision they didn't agree with. At least there's no dialogue. That's the thing. Just drives me nuts.
Yeah. That's the thing we don't talk about much in public service, is the personal relationships that kind of can deteriorate over a decision that you have to make in your role, that not just this person that you have a relationship with elected you to do.
Well, and there's awkward situations. It's not as simple as guiding the city manager on, road repair maintenance schedules. What do we want to do on a 7-year schedule? There are also social aspects of the community. We have different groups within our community that butt heads with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one a few years ago, and I guess we can talk about this. So there was the, what was it called? It was Drag Queen Story Hour at the Pride event.
Oh, at the Pride event,
right?
yeah.
And there was a lot of social angst about that. And I was mayor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they got moved. They had to move their event to downtown.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was getting phone calls from people.
Because they lost their venue. That's
Correct.
what they had, a venue lined up, and then they lost.
And I had phone calls from people that were very, very much in disagreement with that event going on and some of the things going on with that event. And I had people that were pro for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I had a couple of phone calls from people that were talking about bringing weapons to protect children. And my guidance to them was, okay, if their parents want to raise people a certain way, raise their kids, parents raising their kids is a sacred thing, no matter what your viewpoints are.
Yeah.
If the shoe was on the other foot, would you want someone to protect your kids on how you're raising your kids?
Mm-hmm.
And that got into a real awkward place for me.
Really?
It did, because I'm sitting there going, I'm supposed to be running meetings and talking at, junior college basketball tournaments and, national RV groups that come into the fairgrounds and welcome me into Hutchinson.
Mm-hmm.
The social aspect of that with that type of environment was very new ground for me.
Yeah.
And so there was a city council meeting, and I had a few people say, there's a lot of angst going on here. And is it going to bubble? And it was pushed on me to make a comment about settling down. I think I said people need to knock it off. I don't know.
I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I had a few people just stop talking to me.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I don't necessarily disagree with your viewpoint. I just disagree with the mindset of how things are being handled.
Yeah.
I disagree with the means of interaction on how things are being protested one way or the other.
Yeah.
There's proper ways of doing it and there's improper ways of doing it. Regardless of what your belief is, there's proper ways of showing your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then saying I'm going to bring weapons and protect these kids is not a proper way of handling it.
The irony of that too, because it's kids that are being brought to an event by their parents.
Nobody
was being brought to that. I remember that, but
it's a thing with me. Parents should be able to raise their kids.
That's right.
I mean, that's the way they see fit. And
Yeah.
you just don't cross that line.
Yeah.
Unless it's in a way that,
Unless it's unless it's
Yeah.
causing harm, then that's the thing. But otherwise, we tend to in this country appreciate the primacy of the family, that the family has first and inalienable rights on how their family operates until they reach a point that they're causing harm.
Right.
Outside of that, but those are things that's an example of some of the national politics trickling down.
It does, and that was
some of the local issues.
That was a very tough one. The mayoral role for the most part is just a representative role, and it is you're operating the meetings. You have the last vote.
Yeah,
that's rare. The real, if there's any power, it's that for the mayor. Yeah. And the other four can tell you. The other four can tell you you're an idiot still.
Yeah,
that doesn't stop.
Yeah, because you're not elevated necessarily because you have the role. Well, one of the issues that, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but one of the biggest things that a city council does in a normal year and in a normal environment is the budget. That's probably and the budget is kind of I've always viewed budgets as a reflection of values, and we tend to put money where in the things that we care about. So if we care about roads, we put money in roads. If we care about fire departments, we put money in fire departments. Can you kind of help people understand a little bit how the city goes about the budgeting process?
Yes, and we can pick out some hypotheticals too. Some of the more popular ones, we could talk about potholes or grass growing or snow plows and stuff like that. The budgeting process, and it was kind of awkward for a couple of years because we were in limbo with the city manager situation. And I do have to give a lot of credit to the department heads for working through that budget process with very little guidance, but coming to the city council with presentations. And the budget process is public.
Yeah.
A lot of people misunderstand. They think we need to have transparency, and it's a public meetings. These are done in public.
Generally over the summer, right?
Correct. Yes. Study sessions, whatnot, they're all open. And then all of the budget information is on the city website with 50 some pages of graphs, which I'm a statistics graph kind of guy. I like that stuff. I used to read reference books. That's what I really enjoyed, National Geographic and stuff. But the first 50 pages or so are just graphs, and a lot of them show running tallies of information for the last 3 or 4 years. So you can see expenditures, revenues. You can see trends happen. Yeah. And I like seeing the trends and being able to say, are we looking at the last 3 years, how does that project for the next 3 years? Where are we going with this? So we get into budget season and we look at things. What are some goals that we've had over the last few years? What have we put off? That's usually what first comes up. Are there necessary repairs that we have delayed due to whatever reason? Are there things that we want as a community that we've delayed that we really should get back on track for? When we were in the 3 or 4 years of COVID hangover, where we had high inflation and whatnot, and housing prices were skyrocketing, and asphalt and fuel, asphalt's oil-based, oil prices, all that stuff. Fuel drives pricing for every product you get for the most part.
Even getting it delivered to you.
Yeah, the smiley boxes from Amazon still cost a lot of money to ship to you. People don't realize that. It doesn't show up for free. There's no stork delivering Amazon boxes. But that drives all those costs. It also drives costs for the city. In addition to that, insurance has been stupid for health insurance.
Yeah.
And when you have a large team, and anyone that's an employer or works for an employer that's involved in human resources and health insurance, they know the last few years has been really tough on those health insurance costs. And the team at the city worked really hard to negotiate as our health insurance rates as low as we could.
Yeah.
That's tough. We have, when we're setting the budget, we look at competing communities in our market. We look at what's the pay rate in our market for different positions, because we know full well that if you can do a lot of the same city employment positions in Hutchinson, you could be doing that in McPherson and Newton and Wichita, and that's our employment basin. So how are we looking with those communities? It's not just pay. We get into things like, how are we doing with our culture for the city? Because it's about a lot of people make the mistake that it's just about pay and compensation. But it really is, do I like where I work? Do I work with people I enjoy working with? Are they doing their job, or am I handling their load as well as my own?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a cultural aspect, and that was a big part of the city manager hiring process, is how are we going to get this culture where it's not just a place to work and make money, it's a place that people want to work.
Yeah.
And that's a constant thing. I'm not saying we're not necessarily there, but I mean, that's a goal to work towards.
Yeah.
I think Mary Grace did a good job getting the ball rolling on that.
Yeah.
And recognizing that. But her background she was a good fit for that based on her background.
Because she had a corporate job where she was partly in charge of.
Yeah, she worked
culture.
for a major airline.
Yeah.
She was an executive for a major airline, and she was I wouldn't call it the headhunter, but she was brought in to fix departments.
Yeah.
So being able to adjust to the situation we're very lucky that she was able to take on that role. It took a lot of pretty pleases to make that happen.
Yeah. I remember that she went into that reluctantly.
She was trepidatious. I think that's the right word.
That's a good word for that. But when you do that, I'm guessing that every year we have projects that didn't get done that we feel like need to get done.
We have a lot of rabbit holes we can go down here, and I keep tripping on them. So we look at the projects that haven't been done, the ones that have been put off. Where are we on the schedule? So a lot of these projects start years and years ago, and it might be we're redoing, let's say, the golf course. That's been a hot topic with the tax vote and everything. But the golf course at Cary Park, it's been going on for many years on updates to that golf course, and we're right at the very end of that redoing that project. Yeah. So that was one to discuss. We look at things like, we've had parks are a big topic. We get into the needs. So we talk about roads, infrastructure, whatnot. The city has an interesting infrastructure. If we talk about our underground piping, for example, it's interesting because the 100-year-old infrastructure has a lower failure rate than the, let's say, 1950s, 1960s infrastructure. And I joked around with the utility group that, those are the recycled Sherman tanks they brought back from World War II.
Yeah.
But the 100-year-old pipes don't have as high of a failure rate.
Interesting.
So you get down to D, C, E, F, all those avenues with the old 100-year-old stuff. Uh-huh. Now, there's still failures, but the percentage per block is lower than the stuff that was put in the 50s and 60s. Huh.
Do you have any thoughts on why?
It's a different product.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the wear and tear. I don't know how it's a variable to take into consideration.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So when we go on the attack on repairing and not just trying to Band-Aid it, but actually, how do we make it better over time? Because we're trying to invest in that. Mm-hmm. We don't want to spend the money, but we want to make sure it's smart if we're going to do it.
Yeah.
When we attack it, it's based on some of this data that's been gathered, and the data gathering is a huge part of the city's goal right now over the last couple of years. And we gather that data and we come up with a plan on prioritizing where this should go. Mm-hmm. So people may see a lot of work happening in a part of town. Why are they over there? Well, that was the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And we're tearing up the road anyway. Let's go ahead and knock all this out while we're here.
Yeah.
So in 10 years, we're not tearing the road back out again.
Yeah.
And there's things like that. We get into, right now, the big change is going to be the water fee, the stormwater fee versus sales tax.
The sales tax.
Right. The stormwater fee had a shackle around the legs, had a ball around the legs on that one because it could only be used for stormwater repair. So if we had a stormwater issue that needed repaired and we had to tear up a street, the stormwater funds could not be used for repairing the street.
Yeah.
And so it was an unbudgeted expense for the street department to pull out of their funds to fix something that's essentially a stormwater issue. Mm-hmm. And then we get into long-term costs. We've been looking at Cow Creek for a very long before this FEMA flood map situation came up. We've been looking at what are we going to do with Cow Creek, which is why the tennis courts the tennis basketball court situation over at, is it Elmdale?
Elmdale, yeah.
Haven't been repaired because why are we going to invest in that if we're going to tear them out for fixing this creek? But that's been going on for years.
Yeah.
The bottleneck to that is essentially, and this is nothing against anyone locally, is essentially the prison.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't do any good to do anything upstream until we know we can fix things downstream on what we need and where the water goes.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we look at. Obviously, roads, infrastructure. We look at parks. We look at how much are we budgeting for, lawn care, things like that.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about, mowing, this last summer, there was a lot of grief because some of the city properties, the grass was growing tall. Well, if you look at, let's say, a 10-year, and this is hypothetical, you look at a 10-year running rate of how many people it takes to mow the city properties. You say, okay, if we level load that, let's say it takes 8 people full time to mow all the city properties on an average year. Mm-hmm. Okay. We had the 7th wettest summer on record.
Everything grew. My gardens overgrew last year.
The grass grows faster.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of low-lying areas that hold water that's part of the city property. So you can't really mow it that much. So you have opportunity issues on getting in there to mow. Mm-hmm. And then you have the grass growing faster.
Yeah.
So then do you hire more people to be able to mow full time? So then when you have summers where it's dry, what are we going to do with the people that aren't working?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a level loading situation. We have a lot of city properties that kind of sit low or in awkward places to mow. I'm making excuses, but there's reasons for that. Same with snow plowing. It's, what do you budget for things that happen once in a blue moon? I used to live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they didn't have snow plows. They had very few because it doesn't snow there that much.
Yeah.
So why are we paying for equipment that's parked most of the time?
Yeah.
And when it did snow, they budgeted just for contractors to come in and do what needs to be done. You'd see these trains of snow plows coming in from up north if they had a big snow event. But at the same time, they close down schools a lot sooner than we do here because people don't have insulation and their houses aren't made. Our houses aren't made for heating for those type of events.
Yeah.
And kids don't typically have the type of clothing to handle those events. So, same with parents. Are you going to pay for a heavy jacket that your kid might wear once every 3 years and they don't fit it anymore?
And they grow out of it by the time they need it.
Because it's not normal for the environment.
Yeah.
So we have kind of the same thing. We're not going to budget for snow removal like they do in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Because it doesn't make sense.
And taxpayers wouldn't want that. That would be a cost that we're bearing all the time when most of the time we don't need it.
And so the city council, when they're budgeting, it's almost like they have a little toggle and there's a spectrum of adding or subtracting some of these budgets for if our environment, if we don't see snows like we did when I was a kid, then why are we budgeting the same amount of percentage of our funds to that?
Yeah.
Should we lighten that up? And that's a decision for the council to make.
Yeah.
Can we lighten up here and go a little heavier on grass if we're seeing more warm weather than snow weather?
Yeah.
Are we going to salting the roads? Mm-hmm. And people will criticize that too. There's processes based on when forecasts come out on how you make judgment calls on what type of treatments you do on the road or no treatments.
Yeah.
And again, the weather and people are unpredictable. So even at the last second, it may be the wrong call, but it's based on information you had at the time.
Yeah.
Leading up to the decision.
Yeah.
We can go down so many rabbit holes on this. The budget's interesting and it changes year to year. And there's a timing aspect of it, which we talked about a little earlier before the podcast.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're making all these decisions around a budget while the appraiser is still working on giving you an assessed valuation for your boundary, your taxing boundary. So in some ways, you had a nice description about darts, but you're trying to draft a budget without even knowing what your tax base is.
We're designing the plane as we're flying it.
Yeah.
We're gathering information to make educated decisions, but we do not have all of the final locked in information because of the way the appraisal and the appraisal review and all that process works. So we are, as a community, as Hutchinson, we are setting a mill levy that matches what we think the valuations will come out at to get to a budget that we agree to. But if those evaluations change after we turn that in, that mill levy, we may find the evaluations may go down from what we think, and then we don't bring in as much.
Uh-huh.
Or the evaluations may go higher. So even if we say, we're going to say revenue neutral, and what we think the evaluations are going to come out just a touch higher, we'd already set our mill levy.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll actually bring in a touch more money than revenue neutral, even though that's our goal. It's usually a very small percentage difference, but it's a little bit of a moving target. We don't have that total valuation locked in before we set our budget.
Can you help people understand what revenue neutral is?
Revenue neutral is basically we don't want to bring in any more revenue money, tax money, than we did the year prior. We don't want to spend more. And we tried to go revenue neutral. Whatever our 22 budget was, we tried to do the same thing for 23 and 24
Mm-hmm.
to try for the city of Hutchinson to try to help with the high inflation costs, because it was just a shock those couple of years.
That's what I was going to say. So you're trying to hold the line on spending while inflationary pressures are coming in every way.
And to do that, we actually, because property valuations were going up, we were lowering the mill levy at the time.
Okay.
Good or bad decision, right?
Oh, you mean what I've seen on the interwebs about you guys just raise the mill levy every year? We
don't have a magic 8-ball with mill levy numbers in it. We don't shake it around. When we did the revenue neutral, because we knew property values were going up, it was going to lower the mill levy.
Yeah.
The mill levy was sitting around 44 in 2019. It went down to about 40 at one point. And then just this last year, it bumped up to 42 to try to offset some of the costs.
Yeah.
That was with the assumption that the sales tax projection might go through.
Yeah.
It would have been changed quite a bit for this budget season if the sales tax hadn't gone through, because and that's the reason for the special election, is because it needed to happen before budget season. So they knew how to plan.
So they knew how to budget.
One more piece of information to have going into budget season.
Yeah.
Knowing if that sales tax passed or not.
Yeah. So you needed to know whether that was going to be reliable income that would happen, because you won't start collecting it till October.
Yeah. It's
right?
I think it starts in October. I think it's about a 2-month delay on when the actual dollars hit the account in the city. It goes to the state and the state gives it back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how they. Yeah,
and just this is a side note, a little bit of a pet peeve. If local businesses are overcharging sales tax, it has to go to the state. The city doesn't get that back.
So that never comes back to the city if they're
No.
So when we have other issues that, like the jail was financed on a sales tax, and I believe the sports arena was too, when those bonds pay off, if they don't recalculate their computer,
right,
then the excess goes to the state.
I've had businesses, some large dollar amounts. I had one a couple of years ago, and this was 2 years after we were at 9.1% sales tax in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So in construction, I'm taxed on point of delivery for materials. And I was in South Hutchinson, and I had a delivery come in, and they charged me 9.1% sales tax, but I was in South Hutch.
Mm-hmm.
And Hutchinson hadn't been 9.1% sales tax for a year and a half. So I called the materials supplier and I said, hey, this is, $30-$40 out of my wallet for the sales tax. It was a few $1,000 order. And they said, well, no one said anything to us. We deliver to Hutch all the time. No one has said anything to us. And I go around town still, and I go by places that are still charging 8.6% sales tax. We've been 8.25 since October of 24.
Wow.
And I'll pay, because it's usually just a few cents difference.
Yeah.
So I'll pay, and I'll pleasantly remind, hey, just so you know, you guys need to double check your sales tax rate. There's one place I've done that 5 times. They still haven't changed it. And it just ticks me off now. But, the person I'm working with, okay. They kind of roll their eyes, and I do it I pay up front and then say after. I'm not asking for 6 cents back.
But it is in the aggregate, but it kind of feeds the narrative that, if we're not charging the right sales tax, people wonder why their sales tax is higher than they think it should be, because in that case, you just give, that's a 0.5%.
That you just gave to the state.
You gave to the state.
That's not coming back to Hutchinson.
Free and clear.
Yeah.
And the state's not keen on refunding that money. Or
It's interesting. So I don't know how it is for other businesses. For me, I go on the Department of Revenue website every month, and I fill out a form, and it asks me what county. So I'll fill out, okay, it's Reno County. Is it Hutchinson? Is it Hutchinson CID? What sales did I have in that? And it'll tell me what my sales tax percentage would be. It's 5 or 6 line items for me every month, because it's just construction. But you think about the retail people that do thousands and thousands of transactions a month that are, a few cents here and there, that has to add up.
Oh yeah, I would think so.
But if I remember right, looking at the Department of Revenue website, if someone is overcharging the sales tax, they can't pocket that. It has to be reported, and it has to go to the state.
Interesting.
Because that would be fraud. If you're charging sales tax up above and beyond
what the actual rate is, and then pocketing it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And a lot of businesses are just putting a dollar amount. They don't put the percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that'd be an easy thing to catch.
Yeah.
But
when you see that,
oh, I'm a nerd. I'm a curmudgeon. I'm a 45-year-old curmudgeon looking for this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, look, this is 2 cents off here, but it's good to know. I mean, you're right. When you get into the aggregate, that's probably when you consider what happens here and then every other city across the state,
right.
It's probably a significant amount of money that is being kind of just falling through the cracks.
It's back to that efficiency aspect.
Yeah.
Even as a community, did it not get communicated well enough? Are these businesses being managed by people that don't live here, that don't notice?
Yeah.
But someone's turning in a sales tax report each month that has the percentage amount.
Yeah.
And so
and
whoever's
it's either
reporting
accurate or it's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And Interesting.
Oh yeah.
So tell me about, one of the big things has been property taxes. And I think the city often, or not just the city, but a lot of local government gets a lot of grief about property taxes going up. We've talked about inflation, and I've had the appraiser in.
Mm-hmm.
I've had an economist for the state of Kansas, the legislature, talk about this. But what's going on with from your view and your time on the city council? What has been the issue with property taxes? Okay. If you've been lower in the mill levy,
mm-hmm.
and except for the last time, the last budget, what's been happening with property taxes? It seems it's the valuations, and that there are some other things that are affecting that.
The valuations of properties obviously is a big part of it. I had a neighbor that bought a house. I think it was $170,000 in 2017. They sold it for $225,000 or something like that 2 years later. The amount of percentage increase in home valuations in multiple areas, it's not just Hutchinson, it's all over the place, really drove up those appraisal rates.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are upset because they don't feel like they can sell their house for what the county has it appraised for. That aspect, along with inflation that our taxing entities see, the county takes care of a lot of road miles.
Oh.
Right. And
this is a 1,200 mile county.
It's a
1,200 square mile county.
It's a large county. And it's for the size of the county, the amount of square miles this county has, there's not a lot of population to cover the cost of every lane mile that we have out there. So we have very expensive roads to maintain that we share with people driving through Reno County.
Yeah.
Not just people that live here.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing with Hutchinson. We share the roads in Hutchinson. We share with people that drive through Hutchinson into Hutchinson, come share our space and our roads, right?
Yep.
So you get into those aspects, the property valuations, especially houses, skyrocket. Mill levies either stay the same or it was a big moving target with the amount of inflation. We usually want to see between 2.5 and 3.5%. Typical, every year. So when you see some years where it's 9%, so you have 9% inflation, but that's average. That's the CPI across many different things.
Yes,
you see construction costs really go up. So, which we can get into housing when you get into that aspect, right? Because the cost to construct a house has just gotten stupid compared to the cost of what a house sitting there is. So you get into a neighborhood where you have a lot of 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses that might be 10 years old. Maybe they're 2,000 square feet. And you want to build a new one, and it's going to cost you $400,000 to build a new one. But the market value for one that's 10 years old is half as much.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for a bank to look at that and think, okay, I'll loan you 80%, knowing full well that I couldn't sell it on the market for 80% of the construction value.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big gap to overcome. But getting back to the budget, one of the hardest things we compare ourselves to is Wichita.
Yeah.
Wichita is one of the best cost of living communities in the country. The other aspect about Wichita, for every square block in Wichita, the property values are twice as much as they are here in Hutchinson.
Really?
Yeah. And so what I did is I took total valuation of property for Wichita when I was Friday night having a glass of wine. This is what I do.
With your spare time.
You're right. This is what I do. This is the fun stuff.
You sound like a real good time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I put on VH1 Classic and do this type of stuff. So I look at total property valuations for the city of Wichita for 2025, total property valuations for the city of Hutchinson 2025, and then pull up the total land area within the city limits for each community.
Okay.
And if you do that, you'll find that the total property valuation per unit of area is twice as much in Wichita. So if their total property valuations are averaging twice as much as they are here, their rates can be quite a bit lower to take care of the same amount of infrastructure per unit block. It takes about the same amount of sewer pipe and water pipe to feed a block in Wichita as it does in Hutchinson, and asphalt and sidewalks and all that stuff. Those costs are about the same.
Yeah.
You know, we don't pay our fire department, police department, city employees. It's not a 30% difference between Hutchinson and Wichita.
Yeah.
They're all somewhat within the same realm.
And if they weren't, you would have staffing issues.
And we've been down those roads before.
Yeah.
And it's different for staffing issues like that. In some people, when the city manager aspect came up, you know, we have a lot of department heads, city managers, department heads, just like it is in any business. There's not as, if you look at, is it C-suite, you know, upper level, you tend to recruit in a region, not, and for town, for the education, education in a region, and people will move for those jobs. There's a lot of jobs locally that it's easy for someone to just say, hey, I'm going to drive 15 minutes, 20 minutes further in the morning, and I have 3 other communities I can go work at that have the same positions open.
Yeah.
And we have to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And that's where you get back into the culture aspect too. We want to have a good culture, because then people, is it worth the drive? Is it worth that? Because I like where I work.
Yeah. If there are things they like and the pay is not quite what it would be, it may not be worth the drive. It may make them want to stay.
My rule of thumb in my past career was, if it's just solely dollars, it's got to be a 10% difference.
Yeah.
For me to make the effort of changing and training and starting over new relationships. And that's with customers. That's with, you know, for a customer to change just solely on price, it's got to be a 10% difference if everything else is equal.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a hassle to make the change.
Yeah.
And that's where you got to bring that into aspect.
That makes sense. Yeah. So when you looked at that and you saw, and I think this is an important thing to talk about, because we talk about, you know, the appraisers talked about total valuation, and we talk a lot about tax base, but that's fundamentally the relationship between your mill levy, the amount of tax you're paying, and the value, the total assessed valuation. That's what I've talked to some people about. You really want to see a high mill levy, go to Western Kansas with no population and not much of a tax base outside of ag land. And there are counties out there that have over 250 mills on, you know, that valuation changes everything.
And we have communities that we can compete against within an hour of here. That, let's say the city mill levy here in Hutchinson's 42, and I know there's a community just down the road here that's 70 for the mill levy. And the housing you're going to get in that market is very comparable price and quality as what you'd get here in Hutchinson.
Yeah. So
it makes you wonder, okay, where's the difference at? But we also, property tax isn't the only form of income, and neither sales tax. There's franchise fees. There's other aspects. It's just sales tax and property tax are the two places that everyone sees front and center.
Yeah.
And they are major drivers.
Yeah.
They are major drivers to what we're doing.
And there is, I mean, I try to remember this. People are feeling the pinch. That's a legitimate, I mean, that the inflationary pressure that happened, particularly with housing, and some of that, you remember this, there was a time where people had put a house on the market for $200,000 and somebody sight unseen would offer $240,000 for it. It was absurd to me that we went through that period of time where people were paying above asking price to get a house, or a house wasn't even on the market for an hour before it was sold.
Another thing that drove that, good or bad, is a real big push to people being able to work remote.
Yep.
And that's one thing a lot of communities have, including Hutchinson, has looked at, is how do we cater to people that have jobs in other communities and have the ability to work remote. Maybe they want to raise their family in a community like Hutchinson. I would rather, if I had a choice, I'd rather people live here and work somewhere else than opposite. Now, the best case would be live here, work here.
Yeah.
But the reason I say live here, even if you work somewhere else, is people tend to spend their money where they live.
Yeah.
And if they work, let's say in Austin, they're working for a company in Austin. This is a friend of mine, works for a company in Austin, but lives here in Hutchinson. His paycheck, he's bringing money from Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
that Austin's not getting anymore.
Yeah.
And bringing it to Hutchinson.
Yeah.
It's money coming in, not money going out. And it's not money just being spun around.
Yeah.
Within the community.
I always thought when that period of time was happening, I thought if Kansas could have done some things a little bit differently than they did, we could have really captured that desire that people were having to leave metropolitan areas.
But you have political migration. You have, due to national politics, due to state politics in different areas, you have people looking at opportunities to move. And now it's become more commonplace and accepted for people to work remote.
Yeah.
So if you have someone that's used to living East Coast, West Coast, and they have relatives in Hutchinson and they like Hutchinson, holy cow, look what you can get here. I better lock this house down. Now I'm willing to pay an extra $40,000 because I sold my $500,000 house that was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in Long Beach.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a
and
neighbor.
It still feels like a bargain.
Right.
Hutch,
and it's
right?
twice the size or 3 times the size. And I have a neighbor that's from Vermont that works for the township she's from in Vermont. She lives across the street from me.
Really?
She still works for the township she's from in Vermont for the city.
Wow.
Or the township.
Yeah.
And she lives here in Hutchinson. Lovely lady.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that live here in town from other places of the country. And it's interesting to hear their stories on what brought them here. A lot of times it's family, jobs. Yeah. Some of them, they came back. Okay. I'm a boomerang. I moved away, said I'd never be back to Kansas, and here I am.
And you came back, yeah.
And I brought my wife and her family and her family's family and her grandma. I mean, we moved 14 people here over the course of 5 years because they came to visit and they decided they want to move here.
Yeah.
From the East Coast.
And that's part of the kind of get into the story of our city and the future. That's sort of what we want, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if there's a lot of again on the internet, there's a lot of angst about whether Hutch is a dying town.
Checks and balances, right?
Yeah. But we want people to move to this town. I mean, that is that's our path to growth.
The ironic thing is simple economics of housing. You know, if we create demand and there's a demand for the housing, the pricing is going to go up.
Yeah. When
the pricing and valuations go up because there's demand, it's going to have a direct impact on how the budgets are done and how the mill levy is set. And as that target, that if that valuation is a hard target to predict before you finish your budget, you could end up with a heavy tax.
Yeah.
And that's I want to make sure that one point of confusion people have is tax rate versus tax dollars.
Uh-huh.
You know, how much the real calculation is how much tax dollars are being drawn from our community on a per capita basis.
Can you explain that?
So if we have a community of, just make the math easy, 40,000 people.
Okay.
And we say, oh, our tax rates are high, our tax rates are low, and there's always a fight about tax rate. The real measure of burden is how many dollars per person in the community. So if we have $80 million for a budget that we pull in, that's what, $2,000 per person for a 40,000 person community. Mm-hmm. You'll check my math.
I'll check it. Yeah.
8, 4, and 2, somewhere in there. But in other communities, they might have a lower tax rate, but due to population and property valuations, they might actually pull more dollars per person.
Yeah.
But it's not noticed because the tax rate looks lower.
Yeah.
And the Department of Revenue has a study, and of course it's a year behind, right? So I think they have 2024, and I've actually posted that before on the property tax dollars per capita based on each county.
And where do we land in that?
I think we were like $1,600 per person.
Yeah.
We were a little bit higher than Wichita, but lower than Rice County, McPherson County, I believe, Kingman County. So the more rural counties, you have that infrastructure per person, which makes it more expensive per person.
Yeah. Fewer people to draw from. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have a lot of bridges.
The bridges are expensive. I remember this gets into the county stuff, but I remember out in the county, if you talk about closing a bridge, people do not accept that very well.
No.
And that's another dynamic that exists in all this is we can, talk about like we could save a lot of money if we close this bridge and you might have to drive 4 miles out of your way to get around it. People don't like that.
That's another tough job of city council member, county commission, any of these taxing jurisdictions is weighing out the harm you're doing for, where do you weigh out the level of harm or inconvenience you're doing for some people for the overall benefit of everybody. So if you have let's say we decide to close down a street, and there's only 3 people that live on this street, and they're going to have to drive a block around if we close this street, but we get to close a bridge that hardly ever gets used, and we don't have to replace it, and it saves the city $250,000. What's the call?
Yeah.
Or and every decision has a spectrum of personal angst or inconvenience versus financial gain or savings.
Yeah.
And those are the tough calls in the community. I mean, the Woodisee Freeway Bridge situation was
Perfect
a huge example.
Yep.
And there are a lot of people that felt like they weren't listened to. And I push back on that because there was a lot of listening. There was a lot of weighing out. And no matter what decision is made, someone's going to end up not getting what they want. That doesn't mean they didn't get listened to.
Yeah.
All that does, if that's vocalized, like you guys just don't listen to me, all that does is create more of a feeling, well, then why should I even try?
Yeah.
Why are we engaging if we're just getting hate for the fact that we engage? Just because we didn't give one person what they wanted, or if you do the job right, up to 49% of the people aren't going to like your decision.
That's always the tricky part of it, and there's no solution that to your point, there's no solution to any problem or any need in a community that's going to make everybody happy.
No, hopefully it's a situation where people that don't like the outcome understand the logic.
Yeah.
I appreciate if the logic is understood, but they don't like the outcome.
Yeah.
The other aspect that's difficult is what is good for the community versus what is good for the people that vote.
Yeah.
Because we might get, if we're lucky, 10% of the people in the community vote. Now, a lot of people aren't able to vote, age and whatnot. But, if we're lucky, we get a few thousand people vote in a community of 40,000. And that's just the way it is. We tend to have people that are active in community events and participation. I don't know if we're low or high. It feels like I see the same 100 to 200 people
at all
the time at anything that has to do with community involvement. But I know there's about 20,000 people on Facebook that are paying attention and have ideas. We don't necessarily have a lack of ideas. We have a lack of physical engagement in those ideas a lot of times. And the person that starts, trying to do something, they're the first ones that get criticized.
Yeah. And that is a paradox, because if you invite the public and you engage the public, and then they don't like what you do, then those two groups get further apart from each other.
We have to. There was a city council member that I worked with, and we had a decision to make that was really tough. And the comment was, really don't want to make the decision. And I think I said something along the lines of, well, we got to make a decision because at worst, half the people aren't going to like you. But if you make no decision at all, 100% of the people aren't going to like you because you're not doing your job.
Yeah.
And then we got to look at it that way. But and also being on city council, we have to take into account that the only people that are going to truly understand what it's like with the pressures and everything going on are the other 4 city council members. So hopefully that's a common denominator among, no matter what is being deliberated and feelings and whatnot, hopefully the team can fall back on the fact that no one else understands better than the other 4 people on what it's like to make decisions
position.
and be at that time with those decisions being made.
Yeah. One of the things that I talked about, I think with Chris Courtwright, who talked about some of the policy changes at the state level that he felt created pressure for local governments. Have you seen some of that? You talked about the revenue neutral. That was a state mandate for a time that said you're going to hold a revenue neutral budget, or you're going to have to.
We're going to go on the LAVTR thing.
Oh, let's do it.
Because that fits right into the
perfect
budget.
Well, we talked about this. I talked about this with Chris the other night, and I want you to talk about this because that's a program, and that's one of just a handful of programs designed to assist local governments in reducing property tax, and it hadn't been funded.
Well, and I don't know who I'm throwing under the bus, or if I might be throwing you. I have no idea if I'm throwing you.
We'll find out,
right? Because I'm not educated on the state level as much as I am. I got my head in the weeds here locally, right? Trying to be retired from it, right? But so the LAVTR, the local ad valorem tax refund, rebate refund, the idea behind it is at the state level, as there's tax revenues in aplenty, right? Those go back to the counties to offset the property tax burden.
Yeah.
My curiosity on that program has always been, what was the trade-off years and years and years and years ago where the local and the state government entities said, hey, we'll do this for you if you do this for us? Because there's always a trade-off.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to know what that, because it feels like one side of this is not doing their job. If the state has tons of money in extra funds a few years ago, you would think, hey, we need to fund this local ad valorem property tax refund like we said we're going to, because that's what it's there for. If we have extra money, it needs to go back down to the counties and go back to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, I'm going to see if I can remember. Well, I would encourage everyone to listen to probably what's going to be the next episode with Chris Courtwright, where we get into this a little more. There was a trade-off. The trade-off was there. It was I won't remember all the specifics. There was a period of time where there were some very big property tax exemptions that were taking money out of local coffers, and the legislature was doing this, and there was a conversation about the negative impact that was going to have. And so part of the trade-off was, we'll offset it with this fund from the state that will come down and basically buy down, pay into the loss that you're experiencing because of some of this. But then in 2002, after 9/11, the state said temporarily, we're not going to fund this because nobody has any money. And I remember this distinctly at the time. Cities said, we'll do our part. I remember that very well. There was a huge conversation. The state said, we don't have the money. 9/11 happened. Nobody expected that. Local governments said, no, we want to do our part. We'll figure it out. And then it never got funded after that again. 2002 was the last year that was funded. And the last year, the legislature eliminated it altogether.
And that's now there is a little bit of a trade-off with the grocery sales tax. I mean, that was good. Right?
Yeah.
That helped. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those programs, and it goes back to the trade-offs and the agreements and how those, and we even have that on the local level. We have things back to budgeting. I know we're trying to work around that a little bit. Unless there's more you want to talk about in the LAVTR, that kind of explained.
Well, it was always frustrating to me that, when we talk about property tax relief, it was frustrating to me when I was in the legislature that we would put the blame on local governments, yet we weren't equipping them with equipping them with tools where they could raise funds in other ways. And we weren't actually funding things that we promised we would fund for over 20 years. And we were passing a budget proviso every year that just said, notwithstanding state law, we're going to ignore ourselves.
We've got it. You can't have it.
Yeah.
But you'd like this, but you can't have it.
Yeah. No, and the law says that we're supposed to pay it to you, but we have this other law that says we don't have to.
I love it. Love it. We made this other rule.
Yeah.
I do that as a dad. We do rock, paper, scissors, dad. And as soon as I point at myself, I win every time. But going back to the local, we have in the city of Hutchinson, somewhat unique. We have a lot of untaxable property or non-contributing, let's say. And we had this, this shame on me because I'm on the community foundation board. We had a group come to town that studied our city for, where our high tax dollar value.
Was this the neighborhood evolution?
Yeah. Thank
people?
you. Yeah. Thank you. And I had asked the question, do we have, in comparison to other communities in the Midwest, do we have more untaxed or non-contributing tax properties? Because I was curious about that because we have the prison, which is a state property. We have the Kansas State Fairgrounds. We have churches and schools and city and county
property.
KDOT property. We have all these properties that are really non-contributing. Nursing homes are property tax exempt for the improvements, I believe. So we have a lot of non-contributing properties, which puts burden on the other people.
Yeah.
And I had asked, is that something you looked at? And we were not particularly special.
Really? Okay.
And I've really felt in my, the sniffing of it, it smells like we should be, we should be leaning a little bit towards having more non-contributing property than other communities, you would think.
Yeah.
But according to their study, we weren't.
We really don't.
Particular. We weren't outside of the norm where it was noticeable, at least.
Yeah.
Which surprised me. I was a little surprised by that.
Because that's all property that still requires drainage and water hookups and all
the same amount of infrastructure, traffic drives to it. We, good or bad, it's part of our community.
Yeah.
We accept it for what it is, our freckles and everything, right?
And everything, yeah.
And I thought it would be a little one leaning one way, but it wasn't. But we have all these entities that are low contribution. I mean, a lot of them still pay some property tax and whatnot. Usually it's the land value. But the improvements are not taxed for property tax. But yeah, that wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be. And I was completely disappointed in my gut check.
Yeah. Yeah. But see, that's so you had a thought and then you found the data.
Well, it's one of those things before I hop on the local news and start bashing all these entities that aren't contributing, rah. I learned that lesson some years ago. Why? Is it a big deal?
Yeah.
You got to investigate a little bit before I embarrass myself on a regular basis. I try to avoid it.
I hear that.
There's a certain amount of confidence when you just accept that you will embarrass yourself.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you need to try.
No. You don't have to go out of your way, right?
People will do it for you.
I want to think a little bit about kind of going forward. We got the sales tax passed. That's going to infuse some resources into the city budget, allow us to get rid of the stormwater fee and reduce pressure on the need to draw more from property taxes.
Right.
You talked a little bit about the flexibility that gives us, but kind of going forward, what are some of the biggest hopes or the biggest challenges you see for the city?
What I have liked seeing is kind of the change in how problems are approached. So, for example, if we're doing a major redo on a road, we need to see is the other infrastructure aspects of this block close to the end of its life cycle?
Yeah.
Let's just take care of it all at once. Because it sure stinks to fix a road, and people are really good at noticing if you tear it back up a year or two later.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's be smart about that. I mean, let's take that into account. If we think there's another 10, 20 years of life cycle based on averages and the data we've collected, data collection's huge.
Yeah. Are we doing a better job at that? It seems
we are, and I'm one of those people. I have a love-hate relationship with studies. Okay, I'm not a big fan of studies. We should be able to logically figure things out on our own. But here's the caveat. I think every study that the city council does, and I can say this because I'm not on city council. I have carte blanche of what I can say on this. I think it's on every city council member to criticize or scrutinize every potential study, but also find value in the fact that none of the city council members have really any long-term experience in every single aspect of information that it takes to run the city. So, and a lot of people we don't have on staff that they might have a general knowledge, but it'd be like they're a general practitioner doctor, but they're not a cardiologist.
Yeah.
Right. They know enough to know that we need to bring an expert in.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that's where the city council members need to look at that and say, okay, let's get a study. It's worth some money. There's some value there to bring experts in, study this to guide us on how we're going to apply 10, 50, 100x the amount of dollars the study costs to put a plan together smart for road maintenance, infrastructure maintenance on pipes, water, sewer, whatever it is, bridge construction. There's times where we have community engagement studies looking at the past and how the community was not engaged in decision making and how it harms our community and how we work as a community together, because it is, and I don't want to get all kumbaya rah, but how we interact with each other, how we feel we're being heard is a big part of feeling welcome in this community versus I just live here. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm part of it. Yeah. And I say this, my dad moved here in 74. He never really felt like he was part of the community. He always felt like it. He voiced that to me well into his 60s. Yeah. I never really felt like I was accepted. Unfortunately for me, I was born here. I am here. People may not like it, but I was part of that.
You're part of it.
I was part of that new hospital in the early 80s. Yeah. I'm a naturalized Hutchinsonian.
But that's an important part because there are, and I've talked about this a lot. There feels like there are two distinct groups of people. And there is a group that feels very not part of the broader community. And one of the challenges I think we have as a community is to try to close that gap a little bit.
Observation, right? And I get my observations wrong sometimes, like I did on the property tax, state versus, city property and whatnot. I feel like I meet a lot of young professionals, a lot of people that are, you would call movers and shakers that moved here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are from here that grew up here and they're making things happen. They love the community, but I meet a lot of people at events that moved here.
Yeah.
That are trying to build their career up, or they got a job here and they're looking for the next, what are we going to do? I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do this. And it seems like they see opportunity moving here. And that's kind of ironic to me.
That people that maybe have lived here for a long time don't see that same opportunity,
or they're just not going. They're just they feel disenfranchised, and instead of finding opportunity within the city limits, all that people do is they look at moving somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of fertilize your own grass. Don't worry about what's on the other side of the fence.
Grass is green where you water it, right?
Yeah. And I've moved 11 times in my life. Yeah. I've lived in 4 different states, and there's benefits to each one. There's things I miss, but some things I miss of those areas I lived in was due to the time of life I was in.
Yeah.
Right. I enjoy being in my 30s and 40s in Hutchinson and raising my kids here, and the opportunities I get living in central Kansas. And for my business, being that I basically work within about an hour drive of Hutchinson, I have more population of the state within a 1 hour drive of Hutchinson than people that live in Salina or live in Wichita, because I get both Wichita, Salina, and Great Bend from Hutch within a 1 hour drive.
Yeah.
And get all those population centers for a business. So I can hit more people there than I can if I just lived in Wichita or Salina.
Because you'd be further away from some of those population centers. Yeah.
It's centrally located for this central part of the state.
And when you go back to the history of Hutchinson, that was one of our big advantages, that we were so centrally located, and within reach of so many things.
That's why the railroad was here.
And there was a time where I read this in an old book. We had like 34 trains a day that went in and out of Hutchinson. That would go to McPherson, Newton, Wichita, Salina, Great Bend, wherever, but there were 34 different trains that would run in and out of here.
If you go back 100, 120, 130 years, Nickerson, Hutchinson, and Newton were hot because of the trains.
Yep.
And a personal story, the farmer's market, we're located right over here. Where we're doing this is close to the farmer's market. So my dad and uncle built that in the 80s. Using the columns from the train station that was in Newton that was taken down years.
Really?
They found those columns and they used those for the building of the farmer's market.
I had no idea. Had no idea.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
They're from the 1890s. They only made those for 10 years.
Really? Wow. Well, they held up.
Useless trivia. I'm a big fan.
It's good though.
Yeah, useless Hutchinson trivia. Yeah.
And all the stats and figures that you could ever want.
All kinds of numbers, man.
What about, kind of what is your vision for, you're here, you're raising kids now, going like, what do you see, or what would you like? And you serve time on the city council. So you're heavily invested in the future of this community.
Yeah. I haven't stopped I went back on the building trades board, and I serve on the Hutchinson Community Foundation board. And I have a couple other groups that I'm involved with. Not near as much social scrutiny being involved in those groups. Right. Yeah. I also don't get to welcome the RV people into town every year, or the NJCAA like I used to. My wife and I, when we moved here in 2014, she made a comment to me that if we're moving to Hutchinson, we're not going to have a house there. We're going to live there. We're going to be part of the community. And that really kind of snowballed, obviously, in being involved in different groups. She has adopted Hutchinson. It's actually very similar to the city she was from in North Carolina. She's from Statesville, which is a blue collar community, about an hour from Charlotte. Okay. 40,000, 50,000 people at the time, junior college. So there's a lot of similarities where she grew up. She's really adopted Hutchinson. She's gotten involved in things that interest her. I, being in construction, mostly in the industrial and commercial segment, I want to see businesses expand. I don't want to see empty buildings. I think we've done a really good job, and it's not a conflict of interest. It's a mutually beneficial situation for everyone if we have, industrial buildings that are occupied to where people have to build new. And I have a lot of friend competitors in my community, the construction community. I'd like to keep them busy putting up buildings and building houses so they don't compete with me on the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
And we all make money, right? Why not? You know? So yeah, I get involved in some development. I'm kind of a lighthearted developer. I've purchased buildings, I've built buildings, and then I end up either leasing or selling them to businesses that are trying to grow. So there's been some new growth in town. I mean, we get kind of a bad rap. The retail gig is tough in Hutchinson until we get to a point where we have more expendable income in our community. The retail will just come.
Yeah. And
that's a misnomer. The city staff and the city council doesn't decide who builds a Wendy's on 30th Street. Yeah. Those are private investors who know a lot more about their market and look for the demographics and the traffic count and everything that makes sense before they make an investment. Yeah. As long as it matches the planning and zoning aspects. That's the only thing we really care about for the most part. But seeing more business growth is a huge thing for me. I like that. But not making the same mistakes that we made 120, 130 years ago, where we really had a lack of planning and zoning and foresight, if I'm using that word correctly, which is why we have a lot of industrial properties on Main Street on the south side of town. And you're not going to see those move anytime soon. But that's also where the power was generated 120 years ago. Yeah. Where this old Sears building is, which is SDI Dollar General, I think, over there. Yep. That used to be the power plant. And the water used to come in from the west through a canal and come over here over by, I think, B Street. And so all your industrial growth was over here on the south side of town where the water came in and fed power and fed all these industrial uses, which is why Hutchinson originally started industrially on the south side of town. And that's where all your railroad tracks are. Yeah. And so you think about that, okay, how was that handled 140 years ago? How do we not repeat that? And that trying to break the repetition aspect is a big part of the decision making, both planning and zoning, city council, and all that. Same thing happened with the hotel situation. How was the atrium or the holodome? How are the incentives for that handled? And how can we change the incentive program to where it works for a new developer without putting the city just handing money over up front? Let's do some pay for performance incentives here, and it worked.
You've kind of hit on something that's always struck me a little bit about the community. Earlier, you'd mentioned something about the planning and the need to have that. If you don't have those, you are prone to the sort of zigzagging as different councils come in, and they're not, because that happens. I mean, we change councils all the time. If we don't have a sort of guiding document or a sort of guiding principle, or to some degree a sense of identity of who we are and what we want in our community, then we're very susceptible to being pulled in different directions, largely just by personalities or random opportunities, or by the lack of something that grounds us to an idea.
You're right. And I know we're getting away from budget, but all these affect our budget. The budget is always affected by all of these ancillary topics. So I want to say that.
Well, I think that's right, because if you go this way for a while and you're going to do this program with roads, and then 2 years later you have a different council and no plan and no guiding principle on that, you come and you do this, and we're going to cut down on this because now I care about these other things.
And it boomerangs. It goes back and forth.
And it's more costly. That's the point. It's more costly to do that.
Yeah, we'd like to level load every topic.
Yeah.
But great example, we have planning and zoning, we have building code, which is different from planning and zoning. And we have the municipal uniform code. I'm going to mess that up, but basically we adopt these codes that are somewhat equal all over the state.
Yeah.
Right. The mistake that happens is people get mad at city staff. Let's say it's planning and zoning. Matt and Paul get beat up because someone wants to put a fence in, and it's, well, we can't issue a permit because it's not the correct location. We can't let you do this. And they get mad at staff. What people mistake is the planning and zoning commission that oversees staff and sets the rules and makes changes that are really the guiding people are community members. It's your community members. It's your neighbors that volunteer their time to serve on these boards that are guiding staff.
Yeah.
And the idea being, what is acceptable? Let's get 7, 9, 11 people, whatever the different board makeups are for airport and planning and zoning and all these different boards. How are they representing the community? They care enough. They're putting their time into it. They must have a reason to do it. But they are the ones weighing out what is acceptable in our community. And the longstanding hypothetical is, would you let someone build a hog farm next to your house?
Yeah.
Because we didn't have any planning and zoning, people just whatever they want.
Yeah.
But wise planning and zoning kind of sets your community in a utopian world. You have industrial areas that line up against lighter industrial, that line up against commercial, and then it fades into residential, then heavy residential. So there's buffer zones between your heavy industrial and your residential living,
which presents what we have down on the south end of town,
which makes
is
it difficult.
Houses surrounded by industrial areas.
And then going back to society 120, 130 years ago, you wanted to live close to where you work.
Yeah.
And a lot of housing developments were put up by wealthy business owners and helped funded by wealthy business owners for their workforce to live near where they work. Mm-hmm. We had a walking community.
Yeah.
Now we have a walking problem. People can't, if they can't park within 100 feet of where they want to go, there's no parking. Yeah, that's the mindset in Hutchinson.
We actually have loads of parking in Hutchinson.
In a national, if you were to judge it on a national scale where people park and they walk 3 or 4 blocks, we have fantastic parking. Yeah. But we also have a lot of wind and heavy, if it's raining and whatnot, you want to park as close as you can.
Exactly.
And I'm a chunky guy. I like parking close too.
But we do. It's an interesting dynamic. And it's interesting the way cities started and they were built around people and people walking to their shopping and to their jobs. Mm-hmm. And then the development of the automobile actually made running a city a lot more expensive.
Correct.
Because people moved further away from where they worked and they were willing to drive. And then we had to build highways and we had to run water and sewer lines way out to the suburbs and do all that. So over time, the old saying, when you created the ship, you also created the shipwreck, kind of goes with this, right? We saved some efficiency in one way, but we created a lot of problems in another.
We created low value per square foot properties as far as property tax goes to offset infrastructure costs. And going back to that study, that just to go show you, ironically, the areas of the communities that were built back when walking, 120 years ago, 100 years ago, where you lived and worked near each other, are the most highest potential values to offset property taxes as you can get. So our downtown corridor, your value per square foot potential is huge.
Yeah.
And that's where we really, as a community, not necessarily the city government, but just as a community in general, if you wanted to see property tax burdens offset, let's try to find a way to create more value on these high potential areas, which would be your downtown corridor, your high dollar per square foot.
Yeah, because you're generating more tax potential off of those than off of a smaller area. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A couple other things I wanted to make sure and ask you about. Quality of life. That's another thing that has come up a lot. Actually, in my interview with Senator Murphy, we had a little discussion about should we be paying for quality of life issues? And I have some thoughts and he had some thoughts. But I'm curious, you mentioned the golf course. Mm-hmm. You talk about parks a lot. What's the value of these quality of life investments in the community?
I'm big on quantitative numbers because that's easy.
Yeah.
These are qualitative.
Yeah.
And it's a feeling, it's a gut feeling. It's how you use it, what it means to you personally. Usually if I were talking to someone one-on-one and let's say you said, I don't golf.
I don't.
Okay. I don't either. I've been golfing, but it was a joke.
Yeah. Well, I decided I didn't need to feel bad about myself for another reason. So I stopped.
I just felt bad for the other people. So let's take the golf course. It's not important to you. Mm-hmm. It has no value to you personally.
That's right.
You wouldn't care if it's there or not, personally.
Yep.
But what is something you do care about that you use that's part of quality of life for you? And
bike trails.
Bike trails. So bike trails are important to you. There's going to be a lot of people that feel the opposite.
Yep.
Right. So if I were talking to someone like you personally and you said, oh my gosh, we're paying too much taxes on this. Okay. Get rid of the bike trails first. Let's get rid of what you care about first. Then you have more credibility. Yeah, get rid of it. Yeah. If you said, yep, get rid of it, I don't care about it because it's something I can live without, and I value it, but I believe in it so much in the quality of life not being part of our community. We'll get rid of the bike trails that you love before we get rid of the golf course.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be someone that feels exactly the same way, but in the opposite direction.
Yep.
So that's the first topic to talk about. The second thing is, what are these assets doing for our community, and how are we handling it efficiently? And there are some things I disagree with, and there are some city council members that I've had discussions with, and we don't see eye to eye. I am not a huge advocate of the city paying for a bunch of sidewalk repairs. And the only reason I say that is because for the longest time, it's been the rule. It is in the code. It is statewide. You are responsible for the sidewalk in front of your house. Repair, replacement. You're supposed to have it clean of snow within 24 hours, I believe. But no one pays attention to that. And it's one of those, no one's enforced it. So it's just accepted that it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. I don't have a sidewalk in front of my house. One of the reasons I bought my house because I don't have a sidewalk in front of it. I like that option.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in town that want sidewalks in front of their houses. I get that. But that's always going to be a hang up for me. Is it enough for me to just fight it? No. There's other things that are bigger fish to fry than the sidewalk aspect. But it also bears into discussion parks. A lot of our parks, people say, hey, sell the parks. And I actually, one of the first things I came in and I wouldn't say harassed, but Paul Brown can be a little blunt. And he and I got along fine because of that. I deal with a lot of people in my personal life that are, I'll say blunt, right? Yeah. And I said, well, we have a lot of unused park space, underutilized, unused. It's just dead ground that we're just mowing. Can't we just sell it off? No, we can't. Because it was donated to the community for the sole purpose of park space.
Yeah.
We forever and ever and ever, it can only be park space.
Yeah.
So when someone approaches the city with, hey, I want to donate land for park space, I'm very hesitant. I've told people I would be against it because it is an added burden that people don't realize. They think it's free.
Yeah.
But now it's become a non-contributing property for property tax. It will never, ever be used for anything but park space. And it will always be a cost burden to the community. If those things are overcome with what the benefit of that park would be, location, attributes, can it not be developed for anything else? Those are things to take into consideration. But just donating property for the sake of donating it actually has some harms that we should consider before saying yes. It's not just free. There are long-term costs associated with it.
You do have to absorb those costs
Maintenance,
over a longer period of time.
Crime.
Yeah.
All those things, cleaning, all the aspects of it cost.
Yeah.
Even if it's just empty ground, it costs. And it no longer contributes to the pool of money we all spend to take care of the community. So there's trade-offs that we need to be taking into consideration. I'm just saying sometimes those variables, I don't think they've been fully vetted in the past. And now we're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Or we have the benefit of it. I don't want to necessarily say we're stuck with it, because I enjoy the parks. My kids go to the parks. Sure. Right. I grew up coming into Hutchinson to play at the parks. My parents didn't live here.
Yeah.
Which that's always another topic too.
Yeah. The people
the sales tax aspect.
That they use the benefits that we have. Yeah.
My mom lives outside of town. She doesn't know that I used her as a hypothetical, that if she came into Hutchinson and she was robbed, do the Hutchinson police say, sorry, ma'am,
you're not from here.
You're not from here. You don't contribute to the taxes. You're going to have to call the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
No, you get the benefit of the local police department, fire, safety, roads, parks, the pool, the senior centers, all of the other things we're all contributing to are still utilized by people who don't live in this community.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's just something that needs to be recognized.
Yeah. No, I like that you have that kind of thoughtful approach to that. My default is parks are good.
I'm not saying they're bad.
No, and I know, but I think it's good to say, okay, yeah, but there is a cost to a park. There's a perpetual cost to that. To me, it kind of goes back to the planning about what do you want in your community and how do you, but you're right that if you, and there are some, I think there was an example here recently where in front of the Salvation Army. That neighborhood wanted a park. It was going to be expensive initially. It was rejected, and then the community did what the community should do, which is say we really want this.
We have to show our work and deliberate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they came back with a kind of a compromise that said, can we at least do this right now?
The thing that bothered me about that is, and this is, I have a lot of people that I'm friendly with and I care about and respect and all that are going to feel the opposite of me on this, right? We have school playgrounds. There's a school playground 2 blocks away from where that park is. But the school playground is closed down due to crime.
Yeah.
So we don't think that's going to happen at the park, or we're accepting that. And that's okay if we're going to accept that as a community as part of the cost of having the park there. There are fantastic people that live around there. They're going to be watching the park and they advocate for it. They really want it. But it's too bad that we have these other taxing entities. And I understand why they don't allow their playgrounds to be open. And I understand that. It's too bad we're in a community where we're building parks within a block or 2 of school playgrounds because it feels like we're wasting one for the other. But I get it's always due to circumstance. Something happened that forced the hand.
That, yeah.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that there's always that ever-present concern of some vandalism or destruction of property or anything
going back to the parks, and we're using the parks as kind of a, guinea pig on this. The other thing to take into consideration is the value that it brings for people coming to the community. It's not just the people that live here that are within the bubble of Hutchinson have been here for years and might be somewhat jaded because they don't see, when they go somewhere else, it's just new and it's fantastic. Yeah. But if you live there for a few years, just go to the local community gossip page in McPherson or Salina. You're going to see a lot of the same things. Oh yeah.
Every city has.
It turns out that there are potholes that extend beyond the city limits of Hutchinson that exist in this world. And a lot of them are in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. And McPherson.
Yeah.
But if someone is new to the community and they're checking it out and they're getting tours. I have a friend that moved back and her husband's a doctor and they came here and they have young children. And so they were really looking at it with fresh eyes in Hutchinson. And one of the things, it was funny, and I apologize to this, I won't use their names in case they hear this, but it was funny when they were considering Hutchinson, they were considering Wichita, and it looked more likely they were going to move to Wichita. A lot more opportunities and whatnot. And the housing was an issue for them. They were having a hard time finding a house that worked for their family. And I met him for coffee at Starbucks on a Sunday morning, I think. It might have been a Saturday morning. And I'm sitting there and we're just talking like this. And I'm telling about Hutch and he said, well, I'm looking at this. We don't know if we'll be in the Buehler School District or Hutch School District. And I said, well, do you want to talk to the Buehler superintendent? So I text Cindy. Is it okay if this person talks? Yeah, sure. Here's my number. He just kind of looked at me. Okay, that's weird. And I said, well, you want to tour the Hutch schools? Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. So I texted Stacy, hey, do you think you can make this happen? And he goes, who's that? She's the mayor at the time. She's the mayor. And within, 30, just the timing was perfect. 30 seconds. There's this lady waving at me from the drive-through and making faces at me. He goes, who's that? And I said, well, she runs United Way here in town. And he just was completely, he's sitting down here for 2 minutes drinking a coffee, and you've got multiple people that are involved in the community just, hey, you want to come talk to us about Buehler schools? You want to come talk about Hutchinson schools? Here's the mayor's number. Here's the superintendent's number for Buehler. Here's this. And the amount of connections he could get in such a short amount of time in this community, that didn't happen in Wichita. Yeah. I promise you that. Yeah. And so that was a big thing for them to feel like they were immediately dialed into the community. Yep. And so I think those types of interactions are something that we bring that even as a city, if we were double the size we are, if we were Salina size even, it'd be tougher to see those types of circumstances happen. Yeah. We have this, I think the nighttime parade during Christmas is awesome. Oh yeah. And it's become somewhat of an attraction to show people that are thinking about Hutchinson. And I think we're, as a community, the credit needs to go out to the chamber and these other groups that are doing that are recognizing, hey, this is a great opportunity to, hey, come look at our hallmark moment here, because there are hallmark moments in Hutchinson. Yeah. Go live in a few other communities and then come back and you'll notice these things a little bit more. Yeah. Definitely. You'll see them with different eyes. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. But the quality of life aspects, the parks and all these parades, parks, all that, there is a value for outsiders coming to Hutchinson, having those amenities. The hard part is, what is that value? Because it's going to be unique to each one.
Yeah. And it is hard. This is always the thing about quality of life, is that it is qualitative. It has a quantitative value that is almost impossible to calculate. The example, spring break was last week. Mm-hmm. I got to take my granddaughters for 2 days, and I was deciding on what am I going to do with them. I settled on Lindsborg because I wanted to get them out of town, and they have trails, and they have that I felt these kids could navigate, mm-hmm. and they connect 2 parks, things like that. I dropped a lot of money in Lindsborg while I was there. But I think that's a sort of thing, like when people come, they'll never be able to directly tie that little bit of sales tax revenue, or that commerce, to the fact that I was like, oh, there's 2 parks here and a trail, and I think I can keep these kids occupied for a day and a half or 2 days.
So then the question comes in, how are we spending wisely on our quality of life aspects, where for me, I'm looking for ways, how do we differentiate our community that others can't copy? Mm-hmm. And that came up with the pool topic quite a bit, right? So Hutchinson decided to consolidate all the pools into one major aquatic center, mm-hmm. this jewel. And that was great.
At the leading edge of aquatic centers.
It was awesome. It was fantastic. It was, cool. And then a couple of years later, another community had the new cool thing. Yeah. Which anyone can do that, mm-hmm. right? So what do we have that we can do that other communities can't copy, to where we don't lose that edge? Yeah. And so we think about things, okay, we've got the cosmosphere, we've got, the space stuff, is there an art aspect? Is there a display aspect? Can we make our downtown unique that we know other communities can't copy? You look at Lindsborg, no other place in Kansas is really going to be Little Sweden. Yeah. They have their shtick. Yep. So we need to go all in on whatever our differentiating factors are. Yeah. And we have Stratica. So we cover the ups and the downs, uh-huh. In our community. We have fantastic sporting events, the junior college level. Yep. We have Geo Woodstock coming to Hutchinson in May, I believe, which is a huge gathering of people that do geocaching. Yeah. How do we take advantage of those things for our local community? And there's going to be a lot of people that I didn't even know that was going on. Yeah. But the news is out there. People are talking about it. People tend to concentrate on the fairgrounds, and the NJCAA tournament is the only things that come to Hutchinson. We have a lot of things that come to Hutchinson that are big groups, hundreds of people at a time. It's just they have their blinders on because they want to not find positive things. Yeah, I think that's right. I think I tell people, talk about moving, and I say you can be miserable anywhere. If you want to move, you can move to the middle of New York City. There are miserable people in the biggest places in the world with the most amenities and most activities. And you really, a place is what you make of it in some ways. And the same thing happens. We can get into some psychology here, but let's take you and I, for example. We could easily find a lot of things that we don't agree on, mm-hmm. right? But we can always fall back on that common denominator that we both give a lot of care. I was about to give a darn on what happens in this community. Yeah. We can always fall back on that common denominator. And then we can find other topics that we do see traction in on how it helps that common goal. Mm-hmm. And we can avoid the things that we know we're not going to agree on. But there's also the same topics in Hutchinson. It's like, I'm going to ignore the stuff that we can agree on or that I like, and I'm just going to concentrate on the things that I think are just horrible. Yeah. Without contributing any effort into making it better. I just want to voice my opinion on it, and other people need to deal with it. Yeah. There's a lot of that. There is a lot of that. And also, I tell people too, if you really feel that strongly and you think your ideas are right, mm-hmm. run. Something that we had the Reno County survey, mm-hmm. The last couple of years, the amount of people that put on there that they were looking for volunteer opportunities really surprised. We were really surprised at how many people said, I'm looking for volunteer opportunities. I want to volunteer. And that's not just Hutchinson, it's Nickerson and Pretty Prairie and all these communities where they don't know where they should put their efforts. And maybe it's a scheduling issue. Maybe it's, but there are plenty of things to volunteer for. And it's not, it's I don't want to be all rah kumbaya on it, but it does, you feel like you're part of the community, and you run into a lot of the same people that tend to appreciate that you're being involved, even at the lowest level.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. And there is a little bit of pride. My wife's big on the art stuff, and she'll go to these parks and they'll paint the sidewalks and stuff. And I have a habit. There's one park, Bernard White, that I drive by every day, and I see it more than my wife ever does. And I'll drive by there, and I'm always looking at in the fence they have. It looks like red cups. They're actually a plastic eel that's made to fit in the fence. Are there any missing? Yeah. Did any pop out? And I'm looking at the paint on the ground, anything peeled up. And so now I'm paying attention to it. And I've never really paid much attention to that park before. But yeah, I mean, when people are putting effort into something, you tend to notice it more. Yeah. And we have a lot of these little pocket nuances about our community, whether it's parks or information or factoids.
Even those little plaques that have some history of a building.
Here's where the Brian Wilson's grandparents lived. Yeah. The Beach Boys.
Oh yeah, I forget that one.
Right? The lady from Andy Griffith's show was from Hutch.
Oh yeah.
Things like that. I mean, people don't remember those things. There's a lot of people that have gone out into the world that are from Hutch or have ties to Hutchinson.
Yeah, that have done really, really cool things. And there's a lot of history here.
I like that. I like the useless trivia.
Yeah, I do too.
But what other questions do you have on the budget?
One thing I want to ask about, I guess, is there's a refrain about Hutch has the highest taxes in the state, or way higher. And we talked about that a little bit. That's objectively not true.
Objectively, there will always be people, and this is the trap. This is the reality. To be fair, this is reality. What about cars? What about I'm being taxed on my trailer? What about it's not just, if we boiled it down to the simplistic term of just property tax or just sales tax, we could show, if we were just comparing those two aspects across the board, we could show we are not the highest taxed. Yeah. We're not. Period. Right. But there's all these ancillary things that people pay for that are noticeable when you pay for it. Going in and registering your vehicle, paying your taxes on your vehicle, paying for taxes, fees, those things. That's usually what people bring up. I didn't have to pay this when I lived in this state. I didn't have to pay this much when I lived here. I have a friend of mine that made a comment about how he had his taxes on his house in Denver were less than they are in Hutchinson. And I wanted to say, is your house in Denver comparable to the house you have in Hutchinson? Yeah. Because the affordability is completely different. Yeah. And it's hard for people to, and I'm guilty of this too, so I have to, be careful to put that down there. It is hard to step back and be completely honest about the information you're putting out there or gathering for that affects you yourself, and subjectively compare it apples to apples. Yeah. Because you're always going to look for the data that supports how you feel. Yeah. And that's the psychology of it. And that's tough, because you could put the best data backed, just quantitative, you can't argue with numbers information out there. People are going to find things. I don't value this number over this number. And they'll find ways to justify their own opinions. Yeah. And that's just nature. Yeah. There's no way to really combat that other than dialogue, which I like that you and Senator Murphy talked and how that goes. That's good dialogue. That dialogue needs to happen more often with people where we know we have differences of opinions. Yeah. The dialogue, not having dialogue is the worst thing we can do as a community. We all go into especially at the community level, we all go to our respective corners and we don't solve any problems. At some point, we don't even agree on what the problem is. That, for me personally, the biggest benefit I got personally, there's no financial benefit being on city council. Yeah. 100%. It costs, right? Yeah, right. The biggest benefit for me was a growing experience on getting out of my comfort zone, my corner, on the people I deal with on a daily basis, my circles and all that, and being put in rooms with people that I wouldn't normally talk to. Just not that I wouldn't want to. It's just
the opportunity.
The opportunities. Yeah. You tend to avoid anything that makes you feel awkward.
Yeah.
And by being put in those situations where I was awkward, which is a natural position for me to be awkward, it really helped me with viewpoints and empathetic viewpoints to how other people are looking at things, and being realistic about my own personal experiences and where my viewpoints might come from. Doesn't necessarily mean I've changed my viewpoints. It just means I can be a little bit more empathetic on how other people might have their viewpoints, and people are allowed to be wrong even when I'm right.
That's very sporting of you.
I will protect other people's rights to be wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
that's the American way, isn't it?
It is.
It is really.
Oh, it is. It's everybody gets to, and we get to be wrong and still enjoy the benefits of our constitutional protections.
There you go. Exactly. That has to be protected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in today. I'm really glad that you took time to visit with me.
I have to apologize for going on so many different directions on this. I've enjoyed talking about
it's
stuff.
Great. We could I'll probably have you in again. We could talk about some other things. We could get into housing. We could get into construction. There's a lot of areas we could get into.
Apparently I'm not shy.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you,
man. If you find the content that we're producing useful, helpful, compelling, interesting, entertaining, or just a good part of your day at all, please consider following us at thatguyinhutch.com or liking and reviewing us on Apple and Spotify. I want to thank a few of my friends who are really important to the podcast. Jenny Burgett designed my logo for me. My son Mitchell has written the intro music. And of course, Christopher Acker sits in the studio with me every week and makes me sound good.
A Salt City Sound production.